Alrighty, guys, and welcome back to the Basketball Fix podcast. Now, in today's episode, we're going to be continuing on with these little off-season, not necessarily reviews, but sort of look back and look what these individual teams have done. I'll eventually get there. I know this has been a little bit of a rough start, but we'll work our way through this. But today's episode is all about the Brisbane Bullets. And, well, if you would have said to me a couple of weeks ago that Jalen Adams, a former NBL MVP, would be on his way to the Bullets for NBL26, I might have laughed a little bit, to be honest, because I wasn't necessarily sure the direction of the Brisbane Bullets heading into NBL26. And now it looks like this team is really starting to come together. And I guess the real big question now is how good is Lash? And let's get into this team because I've got a few little things written down on here on paper. And when I look at this starting lineup of potentially Adams, McDaniel, Alex Dukas, Casey Prather, Tyrell Harrison, I'm excited. But when we look a little bit further, there obviously are some questions based around the Brisbane Bullets and what they've still got to do coming into NBL 26. Now, all confirmed things right now is Jalen Adams, Sam McDaniels, Casey Prather will play for the Brisbane Bullets in NBL 26. Now, there are rumours that Alex Dukas, a former NBA player, recently coming off an NBA championship with the Oklahoma City Thunder, a very young player and prospect as well, will sign with the Brisbane Bullets for NBL 26. Now, he'll bring a whole lot of class, whole lot of athleticism, and is probably one of the best up and young coming players in Australian basketball as well. So this is a massive move for the Brisbane Bullets. A lot of work is still to be done. He's currently playing in the NBA Summer League, I do believe, as well. And there's obviously going to be some NBA interest. So I hope he does get a chance to play back in the NBA. But if he comes back to the NBL, plays for the Brisbane Bullets, this is a massive acquisition for not only the Brisbane Bullets, but the whole entire NBL as well, which is incredible. But the big question mark, I think, which is even bigger than Alex Dukas because he's a known commodity in the NBL, it's Tyrell Harrison. And Brisbane Bullets fans, I sympathise with you a lot here because he's like arguably the best local centre in the game at the moment for the NBL. When you look at his production, his defensive abilities, his offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding, ability to score inside, he is building and growing to be one of the best Australian and New Zealand locals in the NBL. Now, what has he done though over the last couple of weeks? He's well and truly asserted himself as a guy who is arguably close to being a favourite to win a two-way contract in the NBA, currently killing it for the Denver Nuggets at the Summer League at the moment as well. So there's going to be, if maybe not from the Denver Nuggets, a whole lot of NBA interest as well in terms of two-way capabilities. So does that affect his chances of coming back to the Brisbane Bullets in NBL 26? You know, if we're talking about Will Magnay, for example, winning a two-way contract in the NBA, and he hasn't even stepped foot on the Summer League court just yet. But Tyrell Harrison is absolutely dominating. I think there's more of a chance than not that Tyrell Harrison will sign an NBA two-way deal, which again is very, very exciting for Tyrell, but obviously very disappointing for all Brisbane Bullets fans out there as well. But I think one thing that we got to consider though as well, Brisbane has still got an import spot to fill out as well. So, you know, if a guy like Tyrell does leave, obviously there will be some cash that goes away with him. And now you're looking at an import five-man, which there are plenty of them around the world as well. They're a very high commodity as well. They will cost a little bit, the really, really good ones. But when you've got guys like Jalen Adams and Casey Prather, a guy like Marcus Lee is a name that I would probably be looking at as well from a cheap imports perspective, who's played in the NBL, he's got championship pedigree and knows how to do two-way play. You know, he's a good defender. He's a good lob threat as well. I think he would work really well with Jalen Adams as a point guard as well. So maybe Brisbane fans, the tunnel is not gloom and darky and dark, I should say, as some people are thinking right now. But they've still got some good depth. When you've got Mitch Norton coming off the bench, Tane Murray, obviously a young kid coming through, Toby Smith-Milner, there is enough to do and build with the Brisbane Bullets coming into NBL 26. So I'm excited by the prospect of it. And Stu Lash is the biggest question mark for this team as well. When you're looking at a first-year coach, you know, all reports are he is a really good, you know, worker with people. You know, there's really good reports around him. There's really high reviews as well. He was obviously a guy who not many people had probably heard of before he was appointed the head coach of the Brisbane Bullets. And that's completely fine as well. And he's a first-year coach in a really, really high and competitive NBL as well. So I think there's still some pressure on the Brisbane Bullets. Right now, they've gone out there and they're on their way to making a really, really good team. Now it's in Stu Lash's hands to get the best out of this team as well, heading into NBL 26. Because one thing that I think is going to be very beneficial for the Brisbane Bullets is the expectation of winning an NBL championship from the broader media is probably not going to be there. So when you can kind of come into a season under the radar a little bit, make some nice little moves like re-signing Casey Prather and bringing in Jalen Adams and having some, health with your local guys like Sam McDaniel back in the squad as well, I think it only benefits your psyche because, you could probably start the season 4-0 and people would be a little bit wary still to call you a championship contender. So you can 100% fly under the radar for the first couple of months and find your groove, find your feet, find what you want to do on Stu Lash as well. And this team could be a really, really good contender later on in the season as well. But still, so many questions yet to be answered. And we'll definitely be answering a couple of your fan questions as well later in the show. We've got a couple on our Instagram. So we'll be chatting all about those. And if you want to get involved in the next episode, at the Basketball Fix podcast on Instagram as well, plenty more interactions coming with all of our fans over there as well. But another little question mark with the Brisbane Bullets I've circled here is the injury history. Guys like Jalen Adams are coming off the last couple of seasons with a back complaint. Now, last year, you probably didn't see anywhere near the production from the former NBL22 MVP due to some back problems and some back complaints. Now, those back injuries and those sort of injury histories also go into Casey Prather as well, who had an incredible NBL25 season and really found a way to work through injuries and soreness as well and had an incredible season. Was probably fourth in the MVP voting off the top of my head as well. So he was an NBL all-team or first team, I should say, as well. So, obviously the injury history is in the back of your head, but Brisbane found a way to work him through that and had a really good season with him as well. And then obviously Sam McDaniel coming off of 12 months off out of the sport with a shoulder reconstruction, I believe it was as well. So again, a little bit of an injury bug for the Brisbane Bullets. And we all remember last season, the back end of the season, the legs just absolutely fell out from underneath them. So many injuries. There was obviously some unlucky ones like concussions as well, but soft tissue injuries and all that sort of stuff as well, which they couldn't really control towards the back end. So again, if they can figure out all of that, continue to build an incredible squad, they could be well and truly on their way to being an absolute contender in NBL26 as well. Something that Brisbane Bullets fans have been absolutely missing for a number of seasons as well. And I'm sure they're looking forward to hopefully having some success in the not too distant future. Now, we've got a couple of questions here from the fans of the Brisbane Bullets. And one of the questions here is sort of talking about, the championship hopes essentially as well. So we've got from Luca, are they taking it all the way? Now, like I just mentioned before, Luca, the team is 100% well and truly on the way, I think. When you look at their depth, you probably would say they've got a nice 8 or 9 man rotation as it currently sits, with the projections of Dukas joining the squad, Tyrell Harrison staying with the squad. Now, like I mentioned as well, though, if Tyrell is to leave, there is that import spot there to look after and find a big man at the import as well. So, there's not too much negatives. I know losing Tyrell is going to be a huge negative, just purely based on the sheer importance he is to the team, the development that he has produced over the last couple of years, the time and energy that the Brisbane Bullets franchise has put into him as well. You want to see, you be able to reap the rewards of all that development, but unfortunately, it looks like he's going to be reaping the rewards in the NBA. Unfortunately for the team, not again, Tyrell. And obviously losing Rocco Zikarsky as well in the draft to the Minnesota Timberwolves is also another one. I wonder if there's a small chance, though, that Rocco could be one of those guys who comes back to the NBL potentially. To continue his development. We saw it with the likes of guys like Luke Travis, for example, as well in recent years, who got drafted by an NBA team, played the Summer League, but then came back over to Australia to play for their NBL team for a little bit longer, continue to develop. And you look where Luke is right now. I think that's a really good progression path for Rocco. And potentially if Tyrell signs a 2-way deal in the NBA, that starting center spot is his and all of his as well. So it could be very beneficial for his development as well. So maybe that's one that we look at, Brisbane Bullets fans, just trying to keep a really positive spin on this sort of season as well, because I'm sneakily excited about your chances. And, there's still a lot to play out. I'd still have Sydney and Adelaide currently right over you guys because they are known commodities in the NBL. But you're well and truly in that mix now with the Illawarra Hawks, with where they currently sit with their roster construction. Melbourne United in a very similar boat as well. Perth Wildcats, Tasmania Jack Jumpers. There are a lot of unknown commodities right now in the NBL landscape and world as well. So Brisbane are well and truly in that sort of mix right there. Now, the next one here is from Mike Lifts99, a massive fan of the Basketball Fix. And Mike, we absolutely love you interacting with all of that stuff there on social media. And you've asked us, what the bleep are we doing without Tyrell? Now, like I mentioned, let's try to brainstorm a little bit here and talk about what could work with the loss of Tyrell Harrison. There's the first one, which we just mentioned there with Rocco Zakarsky. Potentially, he's the guy you bring back. You look to develop him. He has a starting role. There's no questions about him not starting. You give him that role, you give him that responsibility, and you basically just say, make it work. Otherwise, your NBA dreams could be in tatters as well. That's the first option. Second option is going out there and grabbing an import. Now, what works with this team, I think, needs to be a guy who's solid enough inside and a pick and roll threat. I'm not necessarily sure they need a guy who, is going to have plays run through him, sitting in the pocket, making himself be a bit of a facilitator as well as that back down player or a 3-point shooter. That's why I think a Marcus Lee would be perfect when you're talking about lob threat, defense, and not having to worry about having too many touches in a game. So, that could be a good way they go about it. The other way is they just go for an all-out offensive player. You could look at guys like Cam Oliver, for example. We're talking about recent imports in the NBL, who's, had an incredible NBL career, former Cairns Taipan. Sydney Kings, last year probably didn't get the most opportunity and probably didn't have the most trust from his head coach in Brian Goorjian as well. So maybe he's a guy you look out to for, the offensive end. He's a 3-point shooter. He's a really, really good tacker of the basket, and he's a good pick and roll guy as well. So he could work, but the defensive side is where there have been some downfalls as well. I'm just trying to think of some other players who have recently played in the NBL that could work when we talk about the mold. Like even guys like John Mooney from the Perth Wildcats, that sort of high pick and roll player, come up, set the screens for Jalen Adams, roll really hard. Again, a good inside player, a good offensive rebounder, a good defensive rebounder. It really depends how they want to go about it and how much they rate Tyrell Harrison, because that's where you'll see the sort of play they go after. They'll be trying to probably look for a guy who can give you 10 and 10 in the NBL. Very much similar to what Tyrell Harrison can do. Obviously, a really underrated offensive rebounder, a good solid defensive rebounder, a really good presence inside when it comes down to deflecting shots and blocking shots and also affecting shots as well. So it's going to be a really interesting sort of piece of the puzzle. We are looking at that as well. But again, we're speaking quite negatively right now. For all we know, he might not get signed to a two-way deal. I think it's looking and all the sources who we talked to at the Barstfix as well. I know it's a very easy thing to say, but it's looking like it's a 75% chance he signs a two-way and a 25% chance that he comes back to the NBL for NBL26 as well. So, plenty of questions based around, obviously, where the Brisbane Bullets go in the future and obviously if Tyrell will be a part of them in NBL26 as well. Now, we've got another one here. How good can Casey Prather be in NBL26? Now, if NBL 25 is anything to go off, he could be a top 3 player once again in the NBL. He's a guy who, I remember watching a game. I can't remember who the team was when they played him, but I remember watching this game and he just went on this run where he just continually scored bucket after bucket after bucket. And I think he had like 23 points in the first half. And he did that a number of times last season as well, where he just went on hot streaks. When James Bateman was out of the squad and it was him and Keandre Cook, and he was basically the leader of the whole team and was running the offense, he would just go on these stretches where you just couldn't stop him. He was just white hot. And he was just a psycho. You could just tell he's in one of those zones where a shooter gets into sometimes where they just feel unstoppable. So from a Brisbane Bullets perspective, I think if they can get 21 points out of Casey Prather, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 or 3 assists, I think they'll be really, really happy with that production. And then you've got to have Jalen Adams step up for the Brisbane Bullets. He's got to be close to 20 points a game and 6 or 7 assists a game for the Brisbane Bullets to be a contender this NBL season. So I think when we're talking about Casey Prather, 100%, he could be an all-NBL first teamer coming into NBL 26 once again. But where the Brisbane Bullets are going to succeed and take that next step will be the other players around him. Because I think Casey's going to do what Casey does, but it's going to be down to guys like Sam McDaniel taking on the best offensive player on the other end, knocking down and taking out guys like Bryce Cotton, Kendrick Davis, and really sort of sharing the load defensively with those other guards as well. Mitch Norton, we know what he's done for his entire career. They have got really good capabilities to defend at a high level and play make at a high level and also score at a high level. So that's what gets me bullish. We know the rules, top 3 or top 4 in the NBL for defense typically gets you and gives you a chance at being an NBL champion. Now, the offensive end, they've probably got that. So the biggest questions as of right now come from the defensive end as well. But what do you think about the Brisbane Bullets season, Bullets fans and NBL fans as well? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down below in the comment section, because I think they're a team who's got some sneaky hopes of making a big run in the NBL finals next year, at least making them. I think it'd be the first time they've made the NBL finals in I want to say 7 or 8 years. I could be completely wrong. Let me know in the comments below, but it could even be longer as well, to be fair. But what are your thoughts on the Brisbane Bullets? Let us know below. Let us know what the team might do without Tyrell Harrison. And obviously, let us know as well how excited you are for Jalen Adams and Alex Dukas potentially in the Brisbane Bullets colours next season. But until next time, this has been the Basketball Fix, and we hope you've gotten your basketball fix.